On December 4, 2020, Nicholas Njoroge, a US-based nurse, boarded a plane back to Kenya, eagerly anticipating a festive season with his family. Having worked hard abroad, he was looking forward to enjoying some much-needed quality time with his loved ones and savoring the simple pleasures of home, like roasted meat, which holds a special place in Kenyan celebrations. His journey home was meant to be a warm reunion, filled with laughter, love, and shared meals with his beautiful family. For his wife and 4 kids, the excitement leading up to Nicholas Njoroge's visit was overwhelming. After months of only seeing him through video calls, the anticipation of his homecoming filled their hearts with joy. Dad's return always meant more than just his presence. It meant stories, laughter, and the thoughtful gifts he never failed to bring back from abroad. His visits were cherished occasions, and this time, the festive season made the excitement even greater as the family prepared to create unforgettable memories together. However, amidst the excitement that filled the house, Nicholas Njoroge's son, Lawrence, was an unsettling exception. Unlike the rest of the family who eagerly awaited his father's return, Lawrence harbored a dark and sinister plan to kill the entire family. The reason behind his horrifying intentions was complicated, rooted in a mix of deep personal struggles, resentment, and possibly mental health issues that had festered for some time. For Lawrence, the joy of his father's homecoming symbolized everything he had grown to despise, a stark reminder of his alienation and unfulfilled desires. Whether it was a perceived lack of attention, jealousy over the close bond his father had with the rest of the family, or a deep-seated anger towards them, his motives were not straightforward. Behind the smiling facade of a son welcoming his father back was a mind consumed by darkness, driven to carry out an unthinkable act that would shatter the lives of those closest to him. Lawrence Warunge, born in 1999, was the firstborn child of Nicholas Njoroge and Anne Njeri, a couple who both worked in the medical field. As the eldest in the family, he grew up with the expectations and responsibilities that often come with being the firstborn. However, beneath the surface of what seemed like a normal upbringing, there were deeper, unresolved issues that would later culminate in his chilling plan against his family. Lawrence Warunge was the eldest sibling in a family that included his brother Christian Njenga, 2 sisters, and an adopted cousin named Maxwell. Together, they formed the Warunge family, living in Karura village, Kiambu. What appeared to be a close-knit household would soon be torn apart by the darkness Lawrence harbored within. In a palatial home built for them by their father, Nicholas Njoroge, the Warunge family enjoyed a comfortable life. Nicholas, a dedicated and hard-working man, tirelessly ensured his family had everything they needed. His devotion to providing the best for his loved ones eventually led him to explore better opportunities in the US, where he could further secure their future. This sacrifice allowed his family to live in comfort, but it also meant long stretches of time apart, an absence that may have contributed to the brewing tensions within his eldest son, Lawrence. While Nicholas Njoroge worked abroad, his wife, Anne Njeri, steadily rose through the ranks of the health system in Kiambu County. As a medical practitioner, she devoted herself to helping women in the community, playing a vital role in improving healthcare access and outcomes. Together, the couple was united by a shared commitment to human service. Nicholas in his pursuit of opportunities abroad to provide for his family, and Anne through her work at home, where she impacted lives on a local level. Their dedication extended beyond their family, making them pillars in both their household and community. Nicholas and Anne Njeri were driven by one goal: to give their children the best lives possible. Every small achievement or extra money earned was a reason to celebrate with their kids, a reflection of their deep love and commitment. Anne, always present while Nicholas worked overseas, ensured that the warmth of family life never waned in his absence. She nurtured their children, creating a stable and loving environment at home, while Nicholas continued his tireless efforts abroad. Their sacrifices were always meant to secure their children's future, ensuring they had every opportunity to succeed. In addition to raising their own children, Nicholas and Anne extended their generosity by adopting their cousin, Maxwell Nyenga. They welcomed him into their home, raising him as one of their own and ensuring he felt fully integrated into the family. The family became part of Maxwell, and he, in turn, became an inseparable part of them, sharing in the blessings and love that Nicholas and Anne worked so hard to provide. Like many Kenyan parents striving for the best for their children, Nicholas and Anne ensured their kids attended the best schools. Lawrence was initially enrolled in a private school in Kiambu, where he received a strong academic foundation before moving on to the prestigious Pioneer School, known for its academic excellence. At Pioneer School, Lawrence was recognized as a decent and well-mannered student who preferred to keep to himself. While he wasn't particularly interested in sports, he found enjoyment and inspiration in reading novels. This passion for literature sparked his creativity and provided him with a meaningful escape from everyday life. After completing his education, Lawrence joined PACE International, an NGO focused on promoting education in slums. His commitment to human service mirrored that of his parents, and his efforts were recognized by the organization, which celebrated him as a changemaker. This role allowed Lawrence to channel his creativity and dedication into making a tangible impact on communities in need. Inspired by Lawrence's achievements and his commitment to making a difference, his parents fully supported his dream of becoming an IT professional. They enrolled him at Mount Kenya University to pursue a degree in information technology, providing him with the opportunity to achieve his aspirations and reach for the stars. Lawrence was determined to excel in his IT studies and become one of the best IT professionals in Kenya. However, beneath his quiet exterior, he grappled with a troubling issue that consumed him. Despite his ambition and dedication, he felt isolated and didn't know who to turn to for support or guidance. This internal struggle was a heavy burden for him as he kept his thoughts and feelings to himself, making it difficult for him to seek help or share his concerns with others. Despite all that his parents had done for him, Lawrence felt a deep-seated resentment and insecurity. He believed that they didn't love him as much as they did his siblings, which left him feeling undervalued and overlooked. The adoption of another son, Maxwell, intensified these feelings, pushing Lawrence to the edge. He saw this addition to the family as a direct challenge to his place within it, exacerbating his sense of alienation and deepening his emotional turmoil. The emotional turmoil Lawrence experienced eventually led him to a breaking point. Overcome by rage and feeling increasingly alienated, he reported his mother to the police on 2 separate occasions. First, he accused her of attempting to poison him, and then he claimed she was involved in cult activities. These accusations were deeply hurtful and damaging, reflecting the depth of his internal struggle and the severe strain in their relationship. The situation was indeed despicable, highlighting the severe impact of Lawrence's unresolved issues and feelings of rejection. After Lawrence's disturbing accusations, his mother, being a nurse, recognized that his behavior might stem from a mental health issue rather than actual threats. She tried to address the situation with a firm and traditional approach, giving him what many would call the tough African mom talk, a stern and direct conversation aimed at correcting his behavior and addressing his grievances. Unfortunately, despite her efforts and professional insight, this approach did not resolve the underlying issues. Lawrence's emotional distress and feelings of alienation persisted, and the situation continued to deteriorate, leaving the family in a challenging and painful predicament. Fortunately, as Lawrence started university and lived alone, the physical distance from his mother provided him with some much-needed space and time. This separation offered him an opportunity to reflect on his life choices and the serious accusations he had made against his mother. The solitude of university life could serve as a period of introspection, allowing him to reconsider his actions and the underlying issues contributing to his feelings of resentment and alienation. At university, Lawrence embraced his new life with enthusiasm. Immersed in the vibrant campus environment, he found joy in building new friendships, exploring romantic interests, and participating in the myriad activities that university life offered. The lively social scene and the excitement of campus life provided a welcome distraction from his previous worries about his family. For a while, Lawrence enjoyed this new chapter of his life to the fullest, relishing the fun and freedom it brought. Like many students, Lawrence made the most of his free time when lectures were cancelled, often spending it watching movies and TV series in his dorm. This hobby became a significant part of his routine, offering relaxation and entertainment. However, while enjoying a new series he had recently discovered, Lawrence found that the content began to reignite his troubled thoughts about home. The stories and themes depicted on screen stirred up unresolved feelings and memories, causing his previous anxieties and conflicts to resurface. Lawrence became engrossed in Killing Eve, a British spy thriller that follows the story of a detective on the trail of a psychopathic assassin named Villanelle. Villanelle, with her striking beauty and meticulous methods of killing, fascinated Lawrence. The series' intense and captivating portrayal of Villanelle's character seemed to echo and intensify his own troubled thoughts, drawing him back to his unresolved issues and feelings about his family. Lawrence was deeply triggered when he saw Villanelle confront her mother in Killing Eve. Villanelle's anger over feeling unloved by her mother and the subsequent decision to kill her family struck a nerve with Lawrence. The confrontation mirrored his own feelings of inadequacy and rejection within his family, amplifying his emotional turmoil. Seeing the assassin act on her rage only intensified his own unresolved feelings and the dark thoughts he had been grappling with, highlighting the painful parallels between his life and the fictional drama unfolding on his screen. As Lawrence watched Villanelle's dramatic confrontation with her mother, he felt a chilling inspiration creep through him, a dark idea that he could solve his own problems in a similarly drastic way. Unlike Villanelle, who targeted only her mother, Lawrence's thoughts took a much more sinister turn. Consumed by his unresolved feelings and influenced by the show, he decided that his solution would involve eliminating not just one, but his entire family. This inspiration, though twisted and fueled by his internal struggles, marked a dangerous shift in his mindset. Once Lawrence resolved to carry out his plan, he was consumed by a singular concern: how to commit the homicides undetected. Inspired by Villanelle's ability to kill meticulously without being caught, Lawrence became fixated on finding a way to avoid detection. He spent time strategizing, planning, and considering the methods that would allow him to execute his plan without leaving any evidence that could lead back to him. This focus on evasion and concealment consumed him, reflecting his growing determination to see his dark plan through to completion. Lawrence, aware that planning the perfect crime was the most challenging aspect of his dark intentions, turned to his love for reading to find answers. As a bookworm with a penchant for novels, he trusted that crime books would provide him with the insights and techniques he needed to commit his crimes without detection. He went shopping and acquired 2 specific crime books that he hoped would offer the guidance he needed: 8 Perfect Murders by Peter Swanson and The Eve of Murder by James Whitworth. Armed with his newly acquired crime books and a keen eye on Villanelle's methods in Killing Eve, Lawrence immersed himself in his research. He devoted countless hours to reading and studying the books, analyzing every detail of Villanelle's tactics and strategies for evading capture. Lawrence meticulously combined the information from the books with the techniques he observed from the series, crafting what he believed to be the perfect plan. His goal was to execute his scheme with precision, using the knowledge he had gained to avoid detection and carry out his dark intentions against his family. The combination of theoretical knowledge and practical examples gave him a sense of confidence in his plan as he prepared to put his strategy into action. Lawrence's perfect plan incorporated several key elements to ensure his scheme went undetected. He decided to use disguises to alter his appearance and avoid recognition, an essential tactic for evading detection. Additionally, he planned to involve another person in his operation, someone who would purchase crucial equipment on his behalf. By having this intermediary acquire the necessary items for his mission, Lawrence aimed to further throw off any potential investigation and redirect suspicion away from himself. This strategy was designed to create a more complex and convoluted trail, making it harder for sleuths to trace the equipment and actions back to him. Since Lawrence lacked friends who could assist him with his plan, he turned to a young hustler named Sarah Mathari. Struggling with his own social skills and unable to woo potential accomplices easily, Lawrence chose Sarah to help him acquire the crucial equipment he needed. Her involvement in his plan was a strategic move, aiming to divert attention away from him and add another layer of complexity to his scheme. Sarah Mathari, who worked hard selling eggs and smokies in Thika town to make ends meet, was determined to improve her life. Coming from a challenging background, she saw Lawrence's interest as a significant opportunity. When Lawrence, the son of a tycoon, showed romantic interest in her, Sarah was captivated and fell deeply for him, much like the dramatic romance stories often seen in Nollywood films. Unbeknownst to Sarah, Lawrence was drawing her into a dangerous and deadly plan that would place her in a perilous situation. To her, Lawrence appeared as a calm, quiet, and handsome man, a facade that masked his true intentions. Just like everyone else who was charmed by his outward demeanor, Sarah was unaware of the dark and sinister plot he was planning. Her trust in him, influenced by his seemingly respectable and attractive exterior, ultimately led her into a compromising and risky position. Lawrence, having secured Sarah's involvement, was ready to put his plan into action. To further manipulate her and ensure her cooperation, he told her that his actions were aimed at creating a better and more peaceful life for both of them. He painted a picture of a future where their lives would be vastly improved and free of worry, a compelling vision that resonated with Sarah. Upon hearing this, Sarah was elated. She was thrilled by the prospect of a better life and believed in Lawrence's promise, not realizing the true nature of his intentions. Her excitement and hope made her even more committed to helping him, completely unaware of the dark and dangerous path she was about to tread. With her future prospects shining bright and the promise of marrying into a wealthy family, Sarah was eager to fulfill any request Lawrence made. His first task for her was to rent a house in Mai Mahiu. Sarah, eager to please and secure her place in Lawrence's plans, complied by fabricating a story to the caretaker to obtain the rental. This action marked the beginning of her deeper involvement in Lawrence's dangerous scheme. Sarah told the caretaker that her mother would not allow her to stay with her boyfriend in their family home, which was a lie to secure the rental. Unbeknownst to Sarah, Lawrence intended for the house to be the headquarters for his deadly plan. By December 24, 2020, the house, which had been rented under false pretenses, contained only a single room with a mattress, sparse and unadorned, but adequate for Lawrence's purposes. This setup marked the beginning of their preparations, coinciding with Lawrence's father returning home just days before, adding to the tension and urgency of Lawrence's plan. As the festive season unfolded, Lawrence's family was filled with joy and excitement, especially with Nicholas back home. Nicholas relished the opportunity to reconnect with friends and celebrate with his loved ones, completely unaware of the looming tragedy. The festive atmosphere was vibrant and full of warmth, a stark contrast to the dark plans brewing behind the scenes. The family's happiness and togetherness during this time stood in sharp contrast to the peril that Lawrence had set in motion, making the impending tragedy all the more chilling. While Lawrence was preparing his sinister plan, his family enjoyed a heartwarming Christmas and end-of-year celebration. Nicholas and Anne, along with their children, embraced the joy and togetherness of the season. They visited and entertained family at home, savoring the festive spirit and the warmth of being together. It was a time of happiness and celebration, completely overshadowed by the upcoming tragedy that Lawrence was orchestrating. The contrast between their joyous celebrations and the dark plans unfolding was stark and unsettling. For Lawrence, the festive season and the family's joyful celebrations were a bitter contrast to his own feelings of anger and resentment. While his family reveled in the warmth and togetherness of Christmas, Lawrence harbored a deep-seated wish to see them gone. Despite outwardly observing and perhaps even feigning interest in their happiness, He knew with grim certainty that he would soon have the last laugh. The disparity between his outward calm and inner turmoil only served to intensify the looming tragedy he was planning to execute. Lawrence meticulously planned his attack to take place before schools reopened, selecting January 5, 2021 as the date for his execution. He aimed to ensure that no one in his family would be safe on that day. In the final days leading up to his planned assault, Lawrence focused on perfecting his scheme, including a critical detail. He would disguise himself as a girl to carry out the attack. This disguise was a key part of his strategy to avoid detection and to catch his family off guard, contributing to the chilling precision of his plan. On January 5, 2021, the Warunge family began their day like any other, as it was the first day back to school after the holiday break. The morning was filled with the usual hustle and bustle as everyone prepared to return to their routines. Nicholas took one of his daughters to school in Karura village, while the rest of the family also hurried to get ready for the day. Little did they know, this ordinary morning would be marked by the tragic events that Lawrence had meticulously planned. The day started with the usual activities and familiar routines, but the underlying threat loomed ominously, ready to disrupt the family's life forever. On January 5th, as part of their routine, Anne drove one of the children to school in Kirinyaga, a detail that Lawrence hadn't anticipated. The early departure threw him off his timing, but he quickly adapted his plan. Instead of heading to his class, Lawrence traveled to Thika to meet with Sarah Muthoni. He asked her to buy 2 knives for him, which Sarah gladly did, eager to support him and believing it was part of their plan for a better future. The knives were a crucial component of Lawrence's scheme, and Sarah's willingness to assist further fueled his preparation for the devastating actions he intended to carry out. After obtaining the knives from Sarah, Lawrence continued with his preparations. He purchased a pair of trousers, a jacket, a pair of women's shoes, a wig, and a female doll, which he then beheaded. With these items in hand, he traveled to Nairobi CBD, carrying his things in a bag. Once in Nairobi, he visited Uhuru Park, taking some time to breathe in the fresh air and mentally prepare himself. The park provided a brief respite from the intensity of his plan and allowed him a moment of calm before he executed his carefully crafted scheme. After his time at Uhuru Park, Lawrence went to Naivas, where he dropped off his bag, fearing a potential security pat-down. He then proceeded to Holy Family Basilica, where he entered to pray. In the sacred space, Lawrence sought forgiveness from God for the sins he was about to commit, reflecting a moment of internal conflict and remorse before he carried out his plan. After his visit to the basilica, Lawrence took a matatu back home, arriving around 7 p.m. His first stop was at James Kinyanjui's place. Without warning, Lawrence attacked James with a metal bar, striking him while he was unsuspecting. Once James was incapacitated, Lawrence proceeded to slit his throat from ear to ear with one of the knives he had purchased. This brutal act was the beginning of the horrific plan he had meticulously prepared. After committing the attack on James, Lawrence waited in the house until around 8 p.m. At this time, his father Nicholas arrived home carrying 2 Belozi beers and headed straight for the bedroom. Seizing the opportunity, Lawrence scaled the perimeter wall and jumped into the compound. Once inside, Lawrence made his way to the main switch and turned off the power, plunging the house into darkness. This action was a crucial part of his plan, designed to create confusion and make it easier for him to carry out the subsequent steps of his horrific scheme. In the darkness of the house, Lawrence set a green paper bag on fire right outside the kitchen. The flames and smoke drew the attention of his mother, Anne, who was cooking supper. As she went outside to investigate the source of the smoke, Lawrence struck her with the metal bar he had used earlier. The blow was fatal, and Anne fell dead, becoming the second victim in his planned attack. Anne's cries for help were heard by Maxwell, who ran outside to assist her. However, he too fell victim to Lawrence's attack. The commotion drew the attention of Nicholas, who rushed out of the bedroom to investigate. Upon reaching the scene, he was confronted by Lawrence, now covered in blood. In a brutal confrontation, Lawrence attacked Nicholas with the knife, further escalating the violence and completing the devastating execution of his plan. In a desperate attempt to escape, Nicholas, already disoriented and injured, ran back upstairs. Lawrence pursued him relentlessly, forcing Nicholas to leap over the balcony, resulting in severe injuries from the fall. As Nicholas lay on the ground with broken limbs, struggling to crawl toward the gate, Lawrence followed him. In a final act of brutality, Lawrence stabbed Nicholas 34 times, leaving him with severe, fatal injuries and exposing his intestines. This vicious attack was the culmination of Lawrence's horrific plan, leaving a trail of violence and destruction in its wake. After the brutal attacks, Lawrence returned to the house and found his younger brother hiding under the bed. He ruthlessly slit his brother's throat, silencing the last of his victims. Following the murders, Lawrence exhibited a disturbing sense of normalcy. He took a shower, ate the meal his mother had been preparing, and watched a movie. Once he had satisfied his basic needs, he went to sleep in his father's bed, surrounded by the bodies of his family. This callous behavior marked the chilling end of his violent spree, demonstrating a complete detachment from the gravity of his actions. After Lawrence was arrested, he continued to pose a threat to his surviving family members. Specifically, he directed his threats towards his two sisters, who had been away at school and thus spared from his violence. His threats were a disturbing continuation of his aggression, reflecting his deep-seated rage and the extent of his psychological turmoil. Lawrence, having brutally stabbed his entire family to death, felt a surge of dark satisfaction, likening himself to a victorious Viking warrior returning from battle. In the eerie silence of the house, the weight of his actions sunk in, but instead of remorse, he relished the chaos he had unleashed. His shoes were drenched in the blood of his loved ones, marking his path through the house with crimson prints. Realizing this, he removed his shoes, leaving them behind as evidence of his merciless crime. Still in a haze of distorted triumph, he walked in his blood-soaked socks towards the shower, determined to cleanse himself of the visible stains of the massacre. The contrast between the cold tiles beneath his feet and the warmth of the blood that clung to him heightened the surrealness of the moment. The water from the shower, cascading over him, washed away the blood, but it couldn't erase the chilling horror of his deed. After the shower, Lawrence dressed up with unsettling calmness, as though preparing for an ordinary day. He applied skincare lotion to his face with the meticulous care of someone performing a daily ritual, reminiscent of Elsa's calm demeanor from Frozen. The contrast between his gruesome actions and this normal routine made the scene even more chilling. With the smell of death lingering in the air, Lawrence made his way to the kitchen. His mother, Anne, lay lifeless outside, her blood pooling on the floor. Ignoring her tragic presence, Lawrence opened the cupboards and served himself the food she had prepared. The eerie quietness of the house contrasted sharply with the normalcy of his actions as he ate in cold silence, treating the meal like any other night at home, indifferent to the horror he had just unleashed. Meanwhile, at the servants' quarters, a fellow farmhand who had spent the evening unwinding with chrome gin after a hard day's work returned home around 9:30 p.m. His casual buzz from the cheap liquor faded the moment he stepped into the compound and saw a horrific sight. His colleague, James Kinyanjui, lying motionless on the ground, blood pooling beneath him. In an instant, the alcohol seemed to evaporate from Moise's body, leaving him stone-cold sober. His heart raced as fear gripped him. He could scarcely believe what he was seeing. James, his companion and friend, had been brutally killed. The evening, which had started with relaxation, had turned into a nightmare. Stood frozen, the world around him spinning as reality crashed down. Something terrible had happened, and he was standing in the middle of it. With a voice sharper than the shriek of the proverbial fat lady, Moise raised the alarm, his panic cutting through the night air like a blade. His desperate cries echoed across the quiet farm, reaching every corner of the village. Within minutes, neighbors rushed to the scene, drawn by the commotion and the fear in Moise's voice. Their torches flickered in the darkness, illuminating the grim discovery that had rocked their quiet community. The lifeless body of James Kinyanjui lay still, and the horror of what had occurred became apparent to all. Not long after, the sound of police sirens filled the air. Sleuths from the Directorate of Criminal Investigations, DCI, arrived swiftly, wasting no time in cordoning off the crime scene. Armed with their tools of the trade, gloves, evidence bags and forensic kits, they prepared to unravel the chilling mystery behind the murder spree. Grim-faced and professional, they began piecing together the clues, unaware that the killer still lurked inside the same compound, having just washed away the blood. The commotion outside caught Lawrence's attention as he sat in the eerie stillness of his home, having just indulged in his mother's food. Like a predator observing its prey, he quickly switched off the lights and moved quietly to his father's bedroom. The darkness of the room cloaked him as he approached the window, peering through the curtains with cold, calculating eyes. From this vantage point, he watched the police methodically begin their work, examining the body of James Kinyanjui. Neighbors stood huddled in shock, murmuring in confusion, but Lawrence remained eerily calm. The flickering flashlights of the investigators danced across the yard, but inside, Lawrence's heart remained still. He felt no fear, no remorse, only a twisted satisfaction as he observed the chaos he had orchestrated. In the dim light, his face was expressionless, yet his eyes glimmered with a strange detachment like that of a true psychopath. It was as though he was watching a crime thriller unfold, entirely disconnected from the fact that he was the very monster they were trying to find. When the sleuths eventually knocked on the gate of the Warunge household, hoping to inform the family about the grisly discovery of James Kinyanjui's body, Lawrence stood frozen in the darkness, listening intently. He knew they were close, too close. But in his twisted, calculating mind, he had already planned his next move. He stayed completely silent, refusing to answer the gate, letting the house remain as dark and quiet as a tomb. The sleuths knocked again, but still no response came. After several moments of waiting, the investigators, assuming the family was fast asleep and unaware of the tragedy unfolding outside, decided to move on, leaving the compound undisturbed. From his hidden spot near the window, Lawrence watched as the sleuths left, his heart not skipping a beat. He had successfully evaded their immediate suspicion, his calm demeanor belying the horror he had just unleashed. For now, he was safe, but only for the moment. Once the sleuths had left, oblivious to the horrors lurking within the Warunge household, Lawrence felt an eerie sense of calm wash over him. He had dodged the police for now, and the night was his again. Without hesitation, he selected a movie, something to distract his mind from the bloodshed he had caused just hours earlier. He slid into his father's bed, as though it was any other night, the warmth of the covers comforting in their normalcy. The movie played on the screen, casting soft, flickering light across the room. Lawrence hoped its familiar sounds and images would lull him into deep sleep, pulling him away from the reality of the chaos he had created. But even as the scenes played out on the screen, his mind was far from peaceful. The memory of the night, the gruesome deeds he had committed, lingered like a shadow. Yet in the twisted recesses of his mind, Lawrence tried to settle into slumber, seeking refuge in the distraction of a film while the world outside reeled from the horror he had wrought. By 4 a.m., Lawrence was already awake, fully aware that it was time to make his exit from the blood-soaked scene he had created. With a chilling precision, he carefully packed his bloodied jeans, shoes, and the murder weapons into a bag, making sure to erase as much evidence as possible. His actions were deliberate and methodical, betraying no sign of panic or remorse. Before leaving, he made one final macabre lap through the house. Stepping over the lifeless bodies of his parents, he bent down to remove their phones, a calculated move to control any trace of communication and disrupt any immediate investigations. The cold bodies of his family members served as a grim reminder of the slaughter he had committed, yet Lawrence moved through the house like a phantom, focused on his task. After collecting the phones, he made his way to the gate, locking it behind him, as though sealing off the crime scene from the world. It was as if he were trying to shut away the chaos, hiding it behind the facade of a quiet, undisturbed household, even as the darkness of his actions loomed in the early morning air. Now, with the scene behind him, he prepared to disappear into the world outside, leaving behind only death and mystery. Lawrence, now burdened with the weight of his actions, quietly slipped out of the compound and boarded a waiting boda boda. The rider, unaware of the horror Lawrence had left behind, took him to Warunge town. In the stillness of the early morning, Lawrence kept his head low, blending in with the routine activity of a town slowly waking up. Upon reaching Warunge, he hiked a ride on a delivery lorry, catching a lift straight to Mathari, where he had set up his escape plan. The familiar roar of the engine and the hum of the road beneath him might have once felt ordinary, but now they were accompanied by the stark realization of the nightmare he had created. As the first rays of the sunrise pierced the horizon, Lawrence felt the gravity of his actions beginning to sink in. The bloodied memories of the night before haunted him, creeping closer with each passing mile. In an attempt to retreat from the growing dread, he switched off his phone, perhaps to avoid being tracked, or maybe to shut out the world that was surely beginning to unravel the horror of his crimes. As the sun rose, so did the inevitability of the consequences he knew he would soon face. Upon arriving in Mathari, Lawrence was hit with an unexpected twist. His girlfriend, Sarah Mathoni, had left for Thika. This sent a ripple of panic through him, as Sarah was supposed to be his alibi, the key to covering his tracks if anyone questioned his whereabouts that night. Without her presence, his carefully crafted plans suddenly seemed vulnerable. But Lawrence, undeterred and focused on his mission, quickly suppressed the panic. He knew he had to keep moving, and the next crucial step was to get rid of the damning evidence. With cold determination, he set about disposing of the bloodied jeans, shoes, and murder weapons he had packed earlier. Each item was a link to the crime, a potential clue that could tie him to the brutal murders of his family. Lawrence scouted for the perfect spot to discard the items, away from prying eyes and far from any connection to him. Whether it was a remote area, a riverbank, or a secluded field, his focus was singular: erase every trace of the slaughter he had orchestrated. In a frantic bid to cover his tracks after realizing that his alibi had vanished with Sarah's departure, Lawrence resorted to a series of desperate measures. He burned the phones of his parents and some of his clothes, hoping that the flames would consume any incriminating evidence they might carry. In a more panicked move, he decided to discard the murder weapon and the clothes he had worn during the attack by tossing them into the pit latrine on the family plot. The pit latrine, an unlikely but effective hiding place, now contained damning evidence that Lawrence hoped would be lost to the muck and filth. This action, driven by desperation, was a clear sign of his crumbling composure. The once calm and calculated killer was now visibly rattled, his elaborate plan unraveling as he struggled to adapt to the unexpected turn of events. As morning light broke, curious neighbors began gathering at the Warunge home, eager to offer comfort and support to the family as they dealt with the tragic news of their worker's murder. The community buzzed with concern and sympathy, their presence a testament to the close-knit nature of the neighborhood. However, when they rang the bell and received no answer, the situation grew increasingly awkward. The silence from within the house was unsettling, especially given the earlier alarms raised by Mwas and the police presence. The neighbors' worry deepened as no one responded to their calls. Unable to contain their concern, one brave neighbor decided to peep through the gate, hoping to get a glimpse of what might be happening inside. The sight that greeted them, or the lack of any movement or response, heightened their anxiety. The house, shrouded in an uneasy quiet, now seemed to hold its breath, leaving the neighbors to grapple with their growing apprehension about what might be unfolding behind those closed doors. As the neighbor peered through the gate, his gaze was met with a horrific sight. Njoroge's lifeless body sprawled just 5 meters from the gate, brutally stabbed 34 times. The gruesome discovery struck him with a jolt of terror, and without hesitation, he raised the alarm, his voice breaking the tense silence of the morning. The commotion quickly attracted the attention of the other neighbors, who, driven by shock and fear, decided to jump the wall and enter the property. Their urgency and concern drove them to bypass the usual protocols, desperate to uncover the truth and provide any necessary assistance. Inside the house, their worst fears were confirmed. They were met with the grim sight of 3 more bodies: Njoroge, Lawrence's mother, and other family members, lifeless and stained with the evidence of the night's brutality. The scene inside was a chilling testament to the violence that had occurred, leaving the neighbors in a state of horror and disbelief. The realization that the entire family had been slaughtered plunged the community into a deep shock, with the search for answers now moving to the forefront of their collective minds. The discovery of the additional bodies prompted an immediate and urgent response from the sleuths. The neighbors, deeply shaken by the horrific scene they had uncovered, quickly alerted the authorities. The investigators, who had earlier been at the scene to collect the farmhand's body, were now faced with a new layer of the crime that they had missed in their initial sweep. The presence of the additional bodies, Njoroge's body lying outside in the cold just like Nicholas Njoroge's, and the 2 boys who had died inside the house, revealed the full extent of the brutality. The stark reality that they had overlooked such crucial evidence during their earlier investigation added to the growing frustration and urgency of the case. The sleuths, now grappling with the enormity of the situation, had to reassess their approach. The meticulous process of gathering evidence and piecing together the sequence of events became even more critical. The discovery underscored the need for a thorough and exhaustive investigation to unravel the full scope of the horrific crime and to find the perpetrator behind the devastating murders. The gruesome scene left the sleuths deeply unsettled. The brutality of the murders and the fact that the entire family had been slaughtered in such a violent manner shocked even the most seasoned investigators. They wondered who could harbor such a deep-seated grudge or malice to commit such heinous acts. As they began piecing together the evidence, it became glaringly apparent that the only surviving member of the Warunge family, Lawrence, was conspicuously missing. His absence amidst the chaos and the clues left behind was suspicious and raised red flags. The detectives' instincts told them that something was off, and they couldn't ignore the glaring gap in their investigation. Determined to find answers, the sleuths shifted their focus to tracking Lawrence. They scrutinized every detail from the crime scene, looking into recent activities, alibis, and any potential leads that could indicate his whereabouts. Their investigation turned into a frantic search for the missing survivor, who had now become their prime suspect. The urgency of the situation intensified as they followed the trail of evidence and leads, driven by the need to uncover the truth behind the horrific murders and to bring the responsible party to justice. Knowing where the other surviving siblings were, one at St. Angela Girls' Karura and the other at Kiambu Girls, provided the sleuths with some clarity. Their presence at school during the murders ruled them out as suspects and focused the investigation squarely on Lawrence, who was now the sole person unaccounted for. With this new piece of information, the sleuths intensified their efforts to locate Lawrence. They began tracking his movements, checking surveillance footage, and interviewing potential witnesses who might have seen him or known about his whereabouts. The urgency to capture him grew as they worked to piece together his trail and understand his actions on the night of the murders. Lawrence's signal reappeared around midnight on Friday as he switched on his phone while in Lower Kabete. This was a crucial breakthrough for the sleuths, who quickly mobilized to track him down. Upon locating Lawrence, the investigators employed intense interrogation techniques to extract information from him. Under the pressure of their questioning, Lawrence broke down and confessed to the murders. After Lawrence's confession, the sleuths followed him to his hideout in Mai Mahiu. There, Lawrence led them to the pit latrine where he had discarded the murder weapons and other incriminating materials. The detectives began digging, and their efforts soon uncovered the bloodied clothes and the murder weapons hidden in the muck. Despite the successful recovery of crucial evidence and the apprehension of the suspect, the sleuths were left deeply unsettled by Lawrence's demeanor. His calm and detached nature, even in the face of his crimes and the gravity of the situation, struck them as particularly disturbing. His ability to remain composed throughout the ordeal added a layer of psychological complexity to the case, leaving the investigators with an unsettling sense of unease. Lawrence's lack of remorse was glaringly apparent throughout the proceedings. As the press swarmed him, he consciously employed a disturbing tactic to fabricate an emotional response. Carrying pepper with him, he would bite into it to produce artificial tears, giving the false impression of sorrow and regret. This calculated attempt to manipulate public perception starkly contrasted with his true, unemotional demeanor and highlighted the depth of his detachment from the gravity of his actions. Despite the outward appearance he attempted to create for the press, deep down, Njoroge Warunge felt no genuine remorse or empathy. When questioned by the sleuths, he expressed a disturbing lack of understanding about the gravity of his actions. He claimed to be in shock himself, not because of the consequences of his deeds, but because he couldn't comprehend why so many people were grieving for a family he believed deserved what had happened to them. His twisted perception of justice and morality underscored his profound emotional detachment and the depth of his psychopathic tendencies. Njoroge Warunge now faces the grim reality of life in remand prison, where he awaits the legal proceedings for the murder charges against him. Given the severity of his crimes, there is little hope of ever regaining his freedom. If he were to outlive his sentence, he would end up spending more days incarcerated than he ever spent living freely, marking a life defined by confinement and the consequences of his actions. The reality of his situation underscores the irreversible impact of his deeds and the lifelong consequences that come with such a grave and horrifying crime.